The driving force behind a vehicle's direction is the steering column. It connects the steering wheel to the front wheels. But despite the name, steering isn't the steering column's only job. It also houses the indicators and a tilt mechanism to adjust the angle of the steering wheel. This company makes custom steering columns, the kind you order when building your own classic car. For the main shaft of the column, an automated bandsaw slices steel tubing, 2 at a time, to a specific length. This belt sander smooths out the rough edges. The next machine forms the shaft into a specific shape that'll engage and turn with the steering wheel. A computer-guided laser cutter makes the steel housing that'll cover the steering column's upper components. It cuts holes for the various control levers that'll connect to the steering column. The upper housing now goes onto a device that holds it steady, while a belt grinder removes any surface imperfections. Meanwhile, workers weld together the 2 steel pieces that make up the steering column's lower housing. Then, to make the steering column look sleek, a steel cone is attached using a fine welding torch. With an abrasive belt, the weld is ground until it's barely noticeable. Then an overall polishing makes the entire surface smooth and ready to paint. A component called the lower yoke shaft is attached to the main shaft made earlier. After greasing it, an upper yoke shaft is snapped into place. These enable the shaft to pivot when you tilt the steering column. Here, a component is installed in the lower housing, to which will later attach the tilting mechanism. Once that's in place, a wire is threaded through. This will help pull through the electrical system later on. Finally, a shaft is slid through the housing. A computer-controlled milling machine shapes the tilting mechanism's aluminium body. The next machine installs position-locking fingers. These allow the column to tilt and lock in place. This press installs bearings to make the turning process smooth. Now the upper section joins the lower section. 2 pins are attached to allow the column to pivot. A thick steel spring supports the column, so when the fingers disengage, the column doesn't just drop on the driver's lap. Next, the column's upper housing is installed. It's the part with the holes for the levers to control the tilt, the indicators, and the hazard warning light. The signal switches and wiring are taped to the pull wire and pulled through the column. The exit hole is later lined with a rubber grommet to prevent chafing. Next, the horn cam is put in. It passes power from the horn to the steering wheel to enable honking. Using this tool, a retaining clip is locked to hold everything together. All the wiring that passed through the steering column connects to a plug. This is inserted into the vehicle's electrical system. The steering columns come in a choice of finishes. You can also buy an unfinished column and paint it yourself. After installation, you just add the steering wheel, then mount the levers and knobs included in the kit. Then from that point on, well, you're in the driver's seat.